Welcome to Dingsco FM's podcast, where we discuss individual and business growth with guests who are an expert in their field. In this episode, we focus on career and business growth, and we discuss the concept of talent. We'll discuss how you can attract great talent to your organization, and we'll share advice on how individuals can stand out and get noticed in the talent market. Joining us today is our guest, Vanessa Raath, who has more than a decade's experience in the recruitment industry, specializing in the tech space. Vanessa is passionate about raising the standard of sourcing talent globally, particularly in Africa. Because of her passion, she launched her own company in 2019 called Vanessa Raath, the Talent Hunter. Here she works with companies across the globe to identify the best talent in the market. She also trains and empowers talent acquisition teams to source their own talent and is currently building an online academy. If you've never met Vanessa, here are a few fun facts that you should know about her. Before she made recruitment her career path, she tried her hand at different roles. She taught children in London, operated a ski chairlift in USA, and taught people to scuba dive in Southeast Asia. She enjoys a good vegetarian braai with family and friends. She loves to spend time outdoors in the bush or at the beach, and she lives to capture breathtaking scenes through wildlife photography. She's an internationally sought-after talent sourcer, talent sourcing trainer, and conference keynote speaker. Welcome to the show, Vanessa.
Thanks, Dar. Wow, what an intro. I feel like I need to record that and listen to it every morning. It's like my power play before I get out of bed.
Oh, well, those are all your credentials right there. So it's really an honor to have you on the show, Vanessa.
Thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm totally looking forward to our conversation.
Fantastic, Vanessa. So you have had quite the journey to get to where you are in the talent space because you've been in it for many years. So please tell us how you got into talent sourcing, Vanessa, and why you're so passionate about your profession.
Thank you. Such an interesting question. So I'm one of those people that have done many different jobs in my life. I've always seemed to have been working. I started waitressing at school. I started coaching sport at school when I was still at high school myself. And everything that I've done throughout my whole career has been very people focused. For my formal education, I went and studied teaching. I taught in the UK for 7 years, which was a little bit more like crowd control as opposed to teaching in London. Then I kind of came back to South Africa after a stint in Southeast Asia and East Africa working as a scuba diving instructor, which was also lots of fun. And didn't really, as a single person, single income, didn't really want to go back into teaching in South Africa. Main reason was because, single income person, would it be enough to survive on? And I kind of fell into recruitment, which was just amazing, to be honest. I kind of found my niche. I found my people. I did 2 years in agency recruitment. I then did 10 years working internally for a tech company, doing all of their tech sourcing for them. And then during my last year with the company, I actually went overseas to a conference in Budapest, not to speak, but just to attend. And it was a sourcing conference by an organization out of the US that was doing their first European conference. And there I actually realized what talent sourcing was. So just to explain it, is that talent sourcing is the very first part of the recruitment process. So it's all about headhunting the right people for your clients. It used to be called executive search, headhunting, and now because of the scarce skills that we have in our industry across the whole world, every recruiter is responsible for sourcing good talent. Probably the worst decision the company made was sending me to that conference because I came back and within 6 months had resigned because I realized that talent sourcing is a thing. In the US, there were teams of talent sources attached to recruiting teams. And I thought I want to bring this to Africa and South Africa. So I resigned and I launched my own talent sourcing training business in 2019. And then we all know what happened in 2020. COVID hit. But to be honest with you, COVID hitting was probably one of the best things for my business because I managed to get international very quickly. And now literally 75% of the teams that I train are sitting all over the world. So it's quite normal for me to be up at 4 to be training to Australia or late at night to North America. And I actually just love what I do because I empower recruiters to find talent more effectively and more efficiently. And at the end of the day, they are then more successful in their careers.
Van, you've had such an amazing journey, and it's so great to hear how the path started. And you touched on it a little bit earlier where you mentioned briefly what talent is. Now, for people working in HR and recruitment, the concept of talent may be obvious since it's a key part of their work. Now, for those listeners who work in different sectors, different industries, who aren't maybe familiar with this concept, what exactly does it mean when you refer to talent?
So talent for me is actually just a nice way of referring to people and candidates and people that you want to work for your organization. So talent is, I believe we all have a talent. Everyone is talented at something. And we also not talented in other spaces. So, I mean, I'll be completely honest. Running my own business and having to learn how to run finances and invoicing and things, I've discovered is not one of my talents because finance and numbers has never really been my thing. But everyone has a talent in some area. And it's about identifying that talent that people have and then nurturing that, because you really want to have people working for you that are doing what they love doing every day. So you want people to not think like it's a slog waking up in the morning and going into the office, because, when they get there, they're actually going to love what they're doing. They love the impact they have on other people's lives or the value they bring to the organization. And that is taking their talent and combining their talent with their passions. And that results in having a lot of happy employees, to be honest. So talent is just a fancy word for mentioning people. So if you talk about being a talent sourcer, you could integrate that with being a people sourcer. It's identifying people and then the talents of where they want their career to go.
That's a really great explanation, and it clears it up quite nicely because it can feel like quite an abstract concept for those that don't actually work in the field. So, talking about talent and talking about employees and their different talents across the companies, you've obviously worked with many companies, both locally and globally, and you've helped them to source the best talent in the market. So what are some of the key things that business executives and managers should keep in mind when they are looking for talent in the market?
So for me, you always want to be looking for people who are standing out, who have a voice, who have an opinion. So for me, when I'm looking for the best talents, I'm always looking for someone who kind of goes above and beyond. So I'm looking for someone who's running a community in their space. So there's lots of people in Cape Town running meetup groups in the tech space, in the marketing space, in the finance space, and they are building communities around them because those people are your natural networkers. They are the ones who are putting themselves out there, giving back, and they just become their natural own brand ambassadors. So your personal brand these days is really important, your personal brand and your employer brand. So people who stand out, and for me are the best talents, are those who are standing out. They're posting frequently on LinkedIn and they've got value to add. But then on the flip side, you've got to think about where do people want to work. So I've just had a recent shocking experience with one of our large cellular network providers in South Africa, without naming names. And I know quite categorically that is a company that I would never go and work for willingly, because I don't like the way that I was treated as an end user customer. So this is where the employer brand is really important. And, think about the companies in South Africa. How do they position themselves? Are they an employer of choice? And I don't mean that they've won lots of awards, but do your staff say that it's a great place to go and work there? These are things that we need to consider, is that how are companies and how are individuals showing up to put their best foot forward in order for them to land the best roles out there?
Yeah, that's so true, Vanessa. And it's really that old expression that first impressions last. And if you're already having a tough experience as an end user or a customer, as you said, it can be easy to make that translation to what is it like to work for this organization or for this employer. So as I mentioned in the introduction, Vanessa, you're very passionate about raising the standard of sourcing talent in Africa and globally. And you also train a lot of talent acquisition teams so that they can successfully source their own talent. What have you found are some of the shortfalls when it comes to talent sourcing standards, whether it's locally or globally?
It's a very interesting question because talent sourcing is a new thing in South African companies. Like I mentioned, when I went overseas to that conference in 2018 to Budapest, I suddenly realized that talent sourcing was a thing, where it was a lot of the South African situations is that the recruiters are 360 recruiters, which means that they have to bring in business from clients, they have to source the candidates, they have to, run the candidates through all the interview processes, all the assessments, things like that. So it's a lot. I mean, you're juggling a lot of balls as a recruiter, even if you're in the internal space and not in the agency space in South Africa. So for me, it's all about raising the awareness that your company needs to realize is that you don't have to be juggling all of those balls. So for example, for me, the thrill of my job is finding the people, sending them a message and getting them to respond to me. And then I can tell them about this amazing opportunity. When it comes to the rest of the recruiting process, then you have to go and interview with this hiring manager, and then that hiring manager, then you've got to do psychometrics, then you've got to do assessments, and then I've got to close the deal. That doesn't really interest me. You've got to work to your team's strengths. So if you're running an internal talent acquisition team or a recruiting team, who's better at being the hunters and who's better at being the relationship builders or the farmers? Because if you can work to the strengths of the individuals that you already employ, you can naturally see, okay, they're going to be the talent sources and these people are going to be the client and candidate relationship kind of ambassadors for the business. So South Africa is definitely behind when it comes to talent sourcing, but that is just because it's normal. It's the natural curve of Africa being slightly behind what's happening in the US and Europe. But there are people who are realizing the value of having a talent sourcer or a group of talent sources within their team that support recruiters. And the biggest thing that we need to realize here that a talent sourcer is not a junior recruiter. So I don't want to be a recruiter one day when I'm big, working as a freelance sourcer all over the world. I want to be able to be given the free rein to identify the best talent, make the initial connection with them, and then feed them onto my clients. It's about, as I say, looking at what people do best and then building on that.
You said there's quite a difference within South Africa or Africa in terms of talent sourcing. Have you found that the transition from being able to source talent locally versus sourcing it globally, and perhaps you want to move to sourcing talent globally, is there quite a jump in terms of a talent sourcer wanting to move from local to global sourcing?
So I think that's not something that everyone wants to do, but I think we're forced to do it. So, for example, the Netherlands has got a larger tech crisis than we have in South Africa with regards to the number of technical skills they have in the country when it comes to their developers. So what they're doing is that they're tapping a lot into the South African market. You know, it's a similar culture. You've got the Afrikaans, you've got the same time zone. A lot of South Africans wanting to potentially immigrate, but they can't because they're on the wrong passports. So it all works very well. So I don't think that we necessarily want to be losing all of our talent out of Africa, because we need as much talent in South Africa as possible, let's face it, which is why I choose to stay here. But for me, I think the way that we recruit in the world is changing. I think that there's now a global war for talent. And if I look at areas like Eastern Europe is full of great technical people, developers and such, as is Africa. With the pandemic, another thing we've learned is that there's a lot of third-party organizations that can run things like payroll and tax, and people can stay in their own countries and work for any company anywhere in the world. And I think that this is something that we need to embrace. So I think South African recruiters and sources are going to be forced to look across borders. We've already got recruiters from Europe in particular because of the time zones looking at our talent in South Africa. And we need to almost up our game and realize is that, we need to start maybe as South African organizations and companies, think about what are we offering our people here, our talents, to encourage them to stay and work for South African companies when they potentially could be sitting at home, working from home, and be living somewhere nice like on the garden route and earning euros or pounds. It's definitely something to think about, that recruitment is already starting to and will only get more and more global.
Touching on that point, Vanessa, that you mentioned about different companies, especially international companies, recruiting and having employees have the benefit of working from home. What has that transition been like? Are there a lot of companies that are making the transition to either remote work or hybrid work, or a lot of companies moving back into must be in office? What has that movement and that shift been like so far in the market?
So from my personal opinion, I actually went for a run yesterday morning and I couldn't believe how hectic the traffic was and how many people were kind of leaving their homes and heading out their driveways to go to work. I was amazed. So what I'm seeing at the moment in the South African market is there's a lot of hybrid work happening where, people are required to go into the office 2 to 3 days a week, and that's the way it's going to be. I haven't heard of anyone going back 100% full time. And I think it all depends, on the individuals that work for the company. A lot of people don't mind going back 100%, especially if they've got a noisy household or they live in a small house or something like that. But also, for senior people with really good tech skills who can pick and choose, I think we can't just take a blanket approach to, right, everyone back in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or something like that. Is that it has to be based on an individual perspective. I think a lot of people did move during the pandemic. So now for them to go back into an office all of a sudden is not going to work and people are just going to resign. So I think it's up to companies to realize is that who do they want to hang on to? The companies that I see that are doing incredibly well are the ones who give the individuals the choice of what they want to do. And it's a consultative approach. It's not just this is what's going to happen. Again, let's highlight the tech industry because, we know that these people are the people who are quite happy sitting in front of their laptops and coding for 8 hours a day. They don't really need to talk to others or go and have a communal lunch or hang around the water cooler. So these are the people that can pick and choose that. And if they are working, internationally for international organizations, they can work from home and they can earn a lot more money. So when a South African company says, actually, everybody back into the office, these people have options. It's something that we've got to be aware of. And I think, again, as I say, it comes down to the individual. I was just saying to my husband this morning I don't think him or I are going to leave home this week. So we went for a run yesterday and we'll probably tomorrow morning. But otherwise, my car hasn't left the garage this week and probably won't until maybe Friday night. I'm out with the girls on Friday night. So I'll get in my car and I'll drive to have dinner with them, which I'm excited about.
Vanessa, for a moment, we've been chatting quite a bit about businesses and them searching for talent in the market, right? So let's for a moment shift our focus to those talented listeners who are currently in the market and looking to work for a great company. Because as you mentioned, that's a lot of the time what candidates do look for. They want to work for a great place. They want to have that flexibility. They want to have the freedom. So what kind of advice do you have that can actually help someone like that stand out as a candidate and be noticed by their potential employer?
Good question, Doug. So it's actually easier than it's been ever before for people to do this. So as we all know, LinkedIn has become like a glorified PNet or Career Junction as a social networking platform. So for any of you listeners who are out there who are, wanting to try and pick up some international exposure, you maybe want to work for international companies, you maybe don't want to particularly leave South Africa, but it's good for us to have people who are working internationally, bringing in a nice salary and staying in the country. So I'm all for that. For me, LinkedIn is it because LinkedIn is full of recruiters. LinkedIn is like Christmas every day for recruiters. So my advice is find those recruiters that specialize in your niche. And your niche could be finance, it could be supply chain, it could be marketing. Connect with those recruiters, either agency recruiters or internal talent acquisition teams, and just have conversations with them. Say, you are open to remote work. This is what you do. The business that they're representing, you could see that your skills could fit in there. Have a look at the jobs that they're advertising too, on LinkedIn. I think too many South Africans are too nervous to go and try their hand in the international market because they think, it's just South Africa, who's going to want me? But I've actually chatted to a couple of companies this week alone that have completely distributed remote teams. I had a call on Monday with a company in Australia that they have loads of South Africans working for them sitting in South Africa. So it can be done. There are those fully remote opportunities out there. So it's all about connecting with people, making sure you filled out everything on your LinkedIn profile. There's actually a lot of information you can put on there. And with regards to something that we refer to as social proof is, have a look at how many recommendations have you got? Have you got endorsements on your LinkedIn profile? Ask your colleagues, ask your ex-bosses to write you a recommendation on LinkedIn. It makes you stand out, makes you look, like you're good at what you do. And then I always encourage people in my training is to post 3 times a week on LinkedIn and kind of put yourself out there and have an opinion. And then people will find you. It's all about attracting the right potential employees and recruiters to you. And this is becoming such a thing. My call before this dial was actually to a guy in Durban. And what he does is he runs his own business as a consultant and he consults with people on how to put themselves out there, how to build a strong personal brand. And for me, the fact that someone's actually working in this role shows that the necessity and the need that has come out for, this kind of behavior. And we were just saying that, when everything went dark during the pandemic and we were all locked in our own homes and we were all making pineapple beer in the bathtub and things like that, is you had to stand out, right? You had to have an online presence, and that's just going to continue. Even though the pandemic days are over, hopefully, you have to stand out and you have to be seen by people. So it's all about investing that time to really stand out and put yourself out there, because then the right opportunities are actually going to come your way as opposed to you always having to chase those opportunities.
That's such great advice, Vanessa. And it really rings to the old saying, if you don't market yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you. So it's a really great advice to actually empower people to say, put yourself out there and make yourself known, make it apparent that you have value to add. As you say, as candidates are looking for value in companies are looking for value in their employees.
two-way process in an interview these days, Dar. You've got the candidate interviewing the client, and you've got the client interviewing the candidate. Just really, a lot of people don't realize that. And to try and get some, old school South African companies to realize that, not everyone wants to work for the almighty, this great corporate enterprise, and, they need to prove themselves as to why they're worthy to work in your company. Those days are gone.
Absolutely, Vanessa. And as you said, the dynamic is completely different now. Both sides are interviewing the other side. And so given the fact that we have this digital world at our fingertips, it's in one fell swoop, your reputation can either be built up or it can shatter, depending on how you've treated customers and employees. So Vanessa, you've shared so much great advice and information. There's a lot of help that's needed in this talent acquisition space, and you're clearly an expert in this realm. And there may be a business owner or a talent acquisition manager, a listener out there who wants to get in touch with you to continue the conversation and get some of your advice. So where are all the channels and the social media arenas where they can get in touch with you?
I'm not hard to find online. So I invite you to connect with me anywhere that you are most comfortable with. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. My email address is van@vanessaraath.com. If you want to sign up for some free training, get involved in my academy. That is academy.vanessaraath.com. So whatever you are comfortable with, reach out to me, and I'm happy to assist anyone who has any questions about what I've had to say, or thinks you might need some assistance or you might need some training. Just shout.
Fantastic, Vanessa. So there are many, many ways that people can reach you, they can get in touch with you and just continue the conversation with you, because it's a unique space that we have to play in now, and we need some specialized advice. Thank you so much for joining me today, Vanessa. It was really an honor to have you on the podcast, and I hope that we can continue the conversation. As you said, you've given us so much clarity on the concept of talent and what it means to attract the best talent to your business. Your passion for sourcing talent and raising the standard always shines through, and because of this, you'll definitely continue to leave your mark in the talent acquisition industry. I look forward to having you back again in future to catch up on your talent sourcing journey.
Thanks, Di. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for inviting me to be a guest. It's been great to see you again and connect with you. Thank you.
We hope that you enjoyed today's podcast episode. Be sure to come back regularly for more great content that focuses on personal, career, entrepreneur, and business growth. Find out more about our coaching services and get in touch with our team by following the link in our post or visit dingscoconsulting.co.za.